Welcome to H-Frame, the only comprehensive, very unofficial guide to vintage Black & Decker Workmates. The website is hframe with a hyphen .weebly.com, where you will find my in-depth documentation, over 60 web pages, over 100 PDF documents, over 500 photographs, and still growing. The subject of this video is the U.S. model Black & Decker 79-001 Type E. The Type E, with E standing for England, was actually the UK model WM325 relabeled for U.S. sales as the 79-001. The Type E was sold in the U.S. in 1974 as a test to see if there was a market for the Workmate in the United States. You may see up to 3 labels on the Type E. The main one is this white and orange caution label showing that it is a 79-001 Type E and that it is made in England. Some Type E's have another label, sort of a sticker actually, not found on this particular one. It's a black and white triangle with rounded corners showing that the Workmate was selected for an annual design award by the Design Centre of London. The third one is another caution label that may be found on the footrest. I have seen photos of one Type E that actually had the original UK label showing its UK model number WM325. I'm sure that this was supposed to be removed when the 79-001 labels were added, but someone must have overlooked it. Each jaw has 10 holes for the swivel pegs, 5 along each edge of the jaw in slightly different patterns. This was eventually reduced to 9 in most of the later types. The holes are 20 millimeters in diameter. The peg holes are reinforced with steel liners. This is a feature found only on the Type E. These are quite susceptible to rust depending on how the Workmate is stored, and it can be very hard to remove that rust when it happens. I spent quite a few hours on this particular one cleaning up some significant rust on those liners. The centers of the vice handles are also made of steel, and they can rust as well. On the later, the American-made Types 1 and 2, they have handles that are somewhat similar to this, but they have aluminum centers. As you can see here, the vice handles and the swivel pegs for the Type E are a blue color. There are also a couple of other, there is a spacer here in the back underneath the rear jaw that is blue. There is a bushing here at the handle that is blue. The lettering on the H-frames, the Black & Decker and Workmate lettering, is also blue. There are a few Type E's where all of these trim items are black. That color difference is one of 2 changes that were made during production, during the short production run of the Type E. The other one is this little tab down here that is seen in this short version, or in another version that is about twice as long as that one. The Black & Decker logo, which is a hex nut with B and D inscribed in it is cast into the aluminum vice handle arms. I think this is a cool feature that unfortunately was not continued on the Canadian made ones. The left and right vice assemblies that hold the vice screws have graduations inscribed every centimeter on their top surface. These are visible when you look down between the open jaws, and they give you a rough guide of how wide the jaws are open. I'm not quite sure how you would use that information, and I've never found any mention of this in Black & Decker's owner manual or anywhere else when they talk about the Type E. So I'm not quite sure what they had in mind. You can also see here that there is a cover, sort of, on the vice screw that protects it. I believe it's on there to protect it from possible damage with work that you're doing on the top, possibly a saw cut or something like that. Unlike all of the subsequent types, the entire frame of the Type E is made of cast aluminum, approximately 27 pieces. The footrest is the only major component not of aluminum, instead made of galvanized steel. The frame design is entirely unique among all of the Workmates ever made and has earned it names like skeleton frame, spider-legged, and lunar module. All subsequent types used stamped steel for most of the frame parts, although the aluminum H-frame was retained up through the 79001 Type 5 and also used on the 79-004 in the US and the Workmate 3980 in Canada until 1979. The all-aluminum frame means that the Type E weighs just under 25 pounds, which is 6 to 9 pounds less than all other 79001s, except for the Type 5. At its full height, the Type E is a little bit taller than the later 7901s by about an inch. Although rated to support 350 pounds, the Type E is not as strong as the later steel frame types and is more susceptible to damage. I have owned 4 Type E's, and 3 of them had damage to the frame, including broken cast aluminum parts at the time I bought them. I've also seen quite a few photos of damaged Type E's. On the other hand, I don't think damage is inevitable. It's all in how you take care of your tools. If you use the Type E with reasonable care, it will hold up just fine. If your work requires heavy loading, or if you're going to be banging it around, stick with a steel frame model and you will be better off. To allow the Workmate to fold and unfold, the upper ends of the 2 side struts slide in slots in the upper frame side pieces. There is a finger-operated latch on each side that does double duty to lock the Workmate in the fully open position and to lock it in the folded position. To release the latch, you lift up on it with a finger. When the Workmate is in the open position, the front end of the latch drops down like this. It traps the upper end of the side strut against a stop on the frame. When the Workmate is folded, the rear end of the latch traps the end of the side strut at the other end of the slot. This is different from later 79001s, which use 2 separate latches for the folded and unfolded positions. The latches for the top can actually hold it at 3 slightly different heights, but the 2 lower positions are referred to as intermediate safety positions. The setup diagram in the instruction manual shows the upper position, which it's in right now, as correct. That's when the side strut top is trapped against the bracket over here. The 2 lower positions are marked as wrong. I'll show you here the middle position. It's right here, and in this position the top of the side strut falls into another portion of the latch. It seems reasonably secure to me, and I have actually tested it by sitting on the top of the Workmate in that position with no noticeable problems. I would recommend using that only if you really need it, and it's certainly at your own risk. The next position down here feels very insecure, and I agree 100% with Black & Decker. You should not leave it in this position at any time. I'd also like to show you one other feature that is related to folding and unfolding the Workmate. And that is this little metal tab on the front edge of the footrest. The sole purpose of this is for you to put your toe on while you are unfolding the Workmate. Unfortunately, for some of us at least, the tab is too small to be convenient for that. I will demonstrate its use in just a minute when I show you how to fold and unfold the Workmate. With the Workmate upright in its full bench height, if you want to fold it, you start by tipping it forward while you're standing in front of the front step. Reach down to the struts that hold the rear leg assembly out. You start to fold them, trying hard not to pinch your fingers. Grab hold of the rear leg assembly like this with both hands. Twist those legs underneath the frame. Set the rear end of the frame down on the ground. Then fold each of the front legs in sideways underneath the front step, starting by releasing the struts. That puts it at the lower sawhorse height. Then you reach down and grab the latches, pull them up to release them, hold them while you're doing this, and bring the top down to the step or footrest. Then you can stand the Workmate up. You would normally store it in this position because it saves space. You can also hang it on the wall in a couple of different ways. If you're going to carry it, if you're on this side of it, you can pick it up by the H-frame. If you are on the other side, you can pick it up by the jaws. I often find this position works better for carrying it because you can see the Workmate winds up being higher off the ground. So if you're walking in an area that has some kind of obstacles that you're likely to catch the Workmate on, this keeps it more out of the way. So then, if the Workmate is folded and you want to unfold it, the first step uses that little tab that I showed you earlier on the front. You put your foot on that tab, which is kind of hard to find because you can't really see it. I think I got it here. You reach down, release the latches, and you can see my toe is holding the step down. You've got to hold that down while you pull the top up, otherwise the bottom comes up right along with it. Then we're doing the reverse of the folding. You tip it onto its back edge, fold out the 2 front legs, Make sure you get the struts locked in their full out position. Tip it forward, grasp the rear leg assembly the same way you did before with both hands, twist it outward. When it gets close, you can lock the two struts for that, and now it's in its full upright position. With the Workmate upside down, we can see more. First, there should be an ink stamp on the bottom of the wooden jaws showing the model number and type, 79-001 type E. These can fade with age and vary a lot in their readability. You may see some other marks as well. This one has some lettering and a 6-digit number. That number there is actually Black & Decker's part number, so that would be the part number for the wooden jaws. Sometimes you also find part numbers on many of the cast aluminum pieces. For example, here's one of the leg struts with a 994687 part number. Sometimes in ads for Workmates for sale, you'll see someone pick up on one of these as a model number. They'll advertise a Workmate 994687, but those are actually just part numbers. On the bottom of the rear jaw on each side is a stud attached with a screw. As the jaws are unscrewed to open to their full opening, the stud hits a stepped portion of the frame back here to prevent the jaws from opening farther than they're supposed to and actually coming off. If it did not stop it there, the jaw could come off on the back. In my opinion, this is the worst design decision found on the Type E. These studs are very often bent or broken because someone tried too hard to open the jaws too far. On later types, the jaw opening is controlled in a much better, more reliable way. You can see at the base of the stud here the repair that I had to do to put this one back in working condition. The 2-digit year of manufacture of the Type E is cast into the inner face of the folding rear dual leg assembly. This is the piece that says dual height professional in blue writing on the other side. This is on the side that's not painted. Look for a small circle resembling a clock face. This one is marked 74 for 1974. So far, all of these marks I have documented on Type E's have been 74. The lower side frame pieces have an unused screw hole near the lower pivot point of the side strut, near the foot. You can see that hole right here. This mystified me for quite some time. When I decided to expand the coverage of my site to document the early UK Workmates in addition to the US versions, I discovered the reason for this hole. The WM325, which you'll remember is what the Type E actually is, the UK WM325, it had a companion model WM225, which has no folding legs. So it is limited to the lower sawhorse height only. Because it doesn't have the folding legs, it uses a different rear frame cross member instead of the pivoting dual leg assembly. And that cross member attaches at 2 points rather than just one on the side. So it uses the screw hole, the screw you see at the top of the view right now, and it also uses the empty hole that you see on the bottom. For those buyers who bought a WM225 and then later decided they really wanted the extra height of the 325, those legs were available separately as a kit that an owner could install themselves. I will wrap this up with a rear view of the Type E. You can see the writing on the rear of the folding leg assembly. It is a dual height professional model, in case you didn't realize that earlier. Please be sure to visit my H-Frame YouTube channel again to see additional videos as I make them. And please visit my website, hframe with a hyphen, .weebly.com. Almost every visitor that I hear from is totally blown away by the amount of material I have on vintage Workmates, and I think you will be too.